Hello, everyone. Hello from all over the world.
Hello,
Thank you for
hello.
joining. Exciting to see you all. We'll give it a minute or so for everyone to settle in, connect, and be with us. If this is the first time you're attending a TheyDo webinar, or maybe it's the nth time, also great to see you back. Use the chat, say hello, who you are, where are you from, to everyone. So I am right now in Amsterdam. Hi, I'm from Toronto. People are dropping in, so say hello, see where in the world everyone is. I think there's a few people watching the game in a certain amount of countries in Europe, at least for the half finals today. DC, Indiana, hello from France. Ooh, nice. We're gonna do two things on the screen, maybe. Hello from Switzerland. Jessica says Brianna from DC. Cassandra from Texas. Very good. We're doing this evening style for those in Europe. So expect a lot of people on your side then. So that's nice to see. Hello from Paris, Amsterdam. Wow, quite a eclectic mix of people. So I guess when everyone is settling in, we can slowly start. Before we start, two housekeeping notes. One is this webinar takes about an hour. If you have questions during the webinar, you can use the Q&A. And there's a button below. You can also use the chat. Doesn't really matter. Q&A is easier. Then you can also see what others have asked. Just drop them whenever you want. I'll try to take them in as they come, but there's plenty of time at the end of this session to go through it. And anything we haven't addressed, we will address later on. But let me kickstart why we are here today. And I think that is the exciting piece. You can see it on the screen already. Usually, when I'm interviewing people on our webinars, it's external guests, which is also exciting. Next week, we'll have another one, and I'll share at the end who that is. But today, I have our very own Dan Sullivan from our Customer Success and Enablement team with me. Welcome, Dan.
Hello, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is awesome. And I think the floor will be yours soon, but let me set the stage today because reason you are here is that we are getting a ton of questions and we're seeing a lot of our customers taking a next step in their journey management, actually building out journey management dashboards to link all their journeys in a nested structure, bringing all their data together. And there were so many things around this that we said, let's host a webinar on this specific topic. But in true TheyDo style, we'll bring stories from the customers, stories from your team and how you're seeing it. But today we're going to geek out on product, which is my favorite part of doing this. And we finally get a chance to pop open a product and geek out a bit together. And you will take us through some of the things that you've prepared for us today.
Yeah,
All in all, for everyone who's joining, please again drop your questions and anything you want to know or dig into right in the Q&A so I can pick it up as we go, or we'll take it at the end of this. So before we dig in, three things we're going to do. We are going to talk about building a journey management dashboard. And I mean, in the invite, we talked about how to master nested journeys, how to roll up your data, how to track impact back to your business metrics. We're going to address all of that. But when Dan and I were preparing, he said, look, one of our core values is actually cloaks off. So internally, that means like there's high trust and people speak what they think or have on their tongue. But it also means like, why don't we show how people in TheyDo use TheyDo, how we are as a company using TheyDo? Because that is one of the questions, and you can speak to it a little bit later, Dan, is like one of the questions customers always ask is like, okay, sounds great, but how are you doing it? Can you show? And sometimes we pop open quickly, but why don't we do it properly? So that's actually what we're going to do today. And I'm very excited to share that with the world. And of course, we have some challenges ourselves. We're going to talk about those as well. But so far, so good. All right. Long-winded intro. Let's dig in. Dan, can you maybe start with helping people, taking them through your perspective? You've been with us for quite some time. You've
sure.
coached and helped hundreds of teams.
hmm
What are some of the outtakes that you've seen from our customers around journey management and building these journey dashboards and thinking of what it means for them driving their business value forward?
Yeah, definitely happy to go through it. And thanks everybody for joining. Joachim mentioned I'm on the Customer Success and Enablement team, and just for your reference, we work with a lot of our larger customers here at TheyDo and try and help them unlock value in general. So really kind of acting as like project managers and helping them as they think through setting up their journeys, setting up their frameworks and things like that. And so to Joachim's point, we've been working with a myriad of customers and kind of some of the themes that we've seen over the last really 6 months, but even going back over a year, is that a lot of our customers are gaining a lot of value with using TheyDo and thinking of it kind of as a database of sorts or a repository of all their journey information. So, obviously what we do really well is helping our customers to consolidate all their insights, all their opportunities as they're looking to build out their journeys. One of our customers even called us their CRM of journey mapping, which I love. But from that, what we've gotten kind of from like a feedback perspective is, but it would be really nice for us to help showcase kind of the impact that we're having. And sometimes the feedback that we got is it was too difficult to understand really how the work that we're putting in as a CX team or a UX team, depending on who we're working with, how that work is actually driving back to value for the business. And so that's something that has been, I mean, a core tenet since I joined. And I think you and I have talked about this for months of like how it is that we want to bring this to life. And so what our product team has been really hard at work on is helping to kind of make it easier for our customers to understand contextually all of the wonderful things that they're doing and be able to set up their journeys in such a way that they can make better decisions. And so in terms of themes that we've heard, it's really that idea of how can we help go from a structured database for our journeys, which is great, to helping us really drive to, okay, so what's the impact that we're having? How is it that we can actually start to manage these and turn journeys from, a pretty artifact on the wall to something that's really helping to drive to decision making? And that's really what we want to dig into and thinking about how you can structure your journeys and start to utilize TheyDo to make an impact. And so that's been a real big thing that we've heard over the last year.
That's awesome. And I'm
Yeah,
sure you're not only talking about getting your CX metrics in, right? And you have NPS or CSAT or assess.
right.
That's like table stakes. And I
Yep.
mean, that's obviously necessary. But I'm talking
Yep.
about real business impact. Like what is
Yep.
our margins? How are we thinking about
Yep.
upsell, cross-sell? How are we thinking about
Yep.
revenue? What is actually, if we break it down, the way these
Mhm.
journeys impacting that? So one of the big pushes we did was
Yep.
build out data warehouse integration so you can actually like get your business metrics in. We will show some of that today, but I think that's
Yep.
not the meat of it. I think organizing and getting your organization around this is the hard part. And that is why I wanted to have you on, just share some best practices and literally dig in. Like, what are you seeing from the field? Um,
Yeah.
I know you've prepared some. Do you
Mhm.
wanna take us through that, or you want to go and talk a little bit about the anecdotes? Where shall we take you first?
That is a great question. So I think I'm happy to dive in because we start with the customer story, and I think anecdotes can obviously come out as we go. And please ask questions in the chat. To Joachim's point, we're happy to go through these. But you brought up one really good point before I jump into this, Joachim, which is I think something we've been working with our customers on, in particularly even more recently with some of the updates that we've had is again thinking beyond just those CX metrics to your point and really understanding, is this going to impact top line revenue? Is this something that's going to impact our churn rates? How is it that we're looking to operate as a business? And that's something we take very core, and that's part of what we want to articulate today as well. So thank you for calling that out because I think that's really important as we think about what we're going to go through. So I'm going to share my screen, and what I really want to take you all through, I'm going to hop around a little bit, but I first want to start with a customer story. And so let me share this right now. And I'm going to go into full slideshow mode so you guys can see the full screen. Okay. So when we were thinking about, Joachim mentioned, we wanted to take you all through and showcase kind of how uses TheyDo to manage TheyDo, which is very meta. But we were trying to think about a great way to articulate what we've been working on and how we've structured all of our journeys. And this story came to mind for me immediately last week. And it's from one of our customers called CHG Healthcare. CHG Healthcare, they're based in the US. They're a healthcare company that's really focused on staffing and recruiting, among other things, and trying to help really find ways to connect caregivers with patients across rural environments, large city environments, and things like that. So they have a very complex network that they're looking to build. And Brian Reed was kind enough to share these slides with us. He shared this on a call with us a few months ago, and it just blew me away. And I love his way of articulating this. He's VP of Experience Design at CHG Healthcare, and he told us basically how he's approached bringing journey management to life. And it was such a great articulation of kind of everything we want to show today. And it gives a really nice visual. So Brian joined CHG Healthcare about 6 months ago. maybe 7 months ago. Time flies. But he was trying to articulate some of the benefits of thinking about journey management. And so what he did is he went into a meeting with some of his other executive leadership team and was trying to showcase how journeys can act as kind of that contextual layer, like I was mentioning. And so what he did is he went into the group of kind of leadership group and said, all right, I'm going to show you this old school journey map, this kind of overall flow map. And I want you to say, you know, how does this make you feel? What response does this elicit within you? And immediately everybody's response is like, yeah, I'm overwhelmed, kind of turned off. This is something that maybe I don't know where to draw my eye or I don't know where to focus. And said, okay, great. So imagine I'm going to try and tell you a story about the physician's journey in this context. What do you think? And immediately guards went up. He said, great. Now, what if I said, all right, I'm going to tell you a story about the physician's journey, but I'm going to build a fire. We're going to sit by the fire. I'll pour you a glass of wine. It'll be really nice. And then I want to tell you a story. What kind of feelings does that elicit? And it was very much a feeling of like, oh, way more comfortable. I'm open to this. This is kind of more collaborative. I said, great. Now, which of these will you remember? And so immediately everyone rallied around the idea of like, well, the fireside chat, of course. That's far more, it doesn't feel like a business meeting. It feels like something that is contextual. It feels like something that is comfortable and I can really understand. And I love that analogy. And this is where Brian then turned this and said, to be effective, journey management must really be easy to understand. So having a kind of common language and simplicity so that all audiences can understand it, but that it's also giving that high level overview to showcase, hey, as we're thinking about a physician journey in that case, or an end customer journey, depending on your own business, how can we structure this in such a way that we can tell a really clear picture to those who may not be as aware? Um, but the interior of those journeys must have depth and granularity. So they must be backed by data. They must be backed by true insights and workflows so that as you're looking at the high level, mountain view pretty picture that he showed, it's backed up by concrete information. Um, and another way that he articulated this was looking at the artifacts. So the way he put this, which I love, is the highest level artifact should be lowest in granularity. So it's easy to understand. It's high fidelity. You can look at it. You can grab it. It's that fireside chat story. But as you dig into layers deeper, mid-level artifact down a low-level artifact, the granularity should increase. It should be backed by more information. It should be structured around, hey, what are the insights that you're gathering? You should be able to really build this out and build out this foundation. And this was such a great way to articulate how journey management can work and where we've seen success with customers that we've worked with and how our own teams are looking to use journeys and journey management to manage our own business. And so I wanted to share this because it honestly aligns so well with everything that we're doing and everything that we're building here at TheyDo. Um, and so just switching over to our side, what we really believe for journey management is that context is really, really important. And so when you're thinking about how you want to structure your journeys and how you want to take all your research and deliver this back to impact, like we said at the beginning, context is super important. Numbers alone can't always just do this. And so taking a look at how Brian structured it in terms of the higher level of fidelity and how it is that we're looking at starting with this, big, beautiful picture and backing it up with data, this aligns really, really well with how we look at the different levels of journeys that we look to roll up. And so when we're working with customers, when we're trying to coach and give suggestions of how it is you may want to build out your journey management practice or looking at just getting started with kind of using journeys and thinking in a journey management centric way, what we always recommend is thinking about your different levels of Zoom as you're thinking about your journey. So the first level, that high fidelity level, like Brian mentioned, we think of as your L0 level, this end-to-end journey level where you're getting that 50,000 foot view that gives a nice snapshot of everything that's going on across your organization or the slice of your organization that you're looking through. So these can be like customer lifecycle journeys, which we'll highlight. And then as you go deeper, going into the L1 level, you can see they're broadening because of how we look at this as we think about the pyramid is each level is getting backed up by more and more information. So we go from an L0, which is high level, to an L1, which we think of as more of a macro level journey. So this could be a goal journey like, hey, here's my purchase experience, if we're thinking about using that example. And then taking that a level deeper. So the L3 journey. So, okay, we've started with just the overarching journey. Now we're getting deeper and deeper, and we're getting into the idea of like an actual task journey, this L2 journey, which is the idea of buying a phone online. And then lastly, our source journeys, which are how do we look at the individual customer experience and really, really, really dig into those to understand the key insights so that we can ladder those all the way back up to that L0 so that we have that nice flow that Brian mentioned, which is that high level fidelity backed up a lot by a lot of different insights and data and research that we can really drive to an impact. And so we wanted to share this. We have some examples that we'll take you through. But as you're thinking through all this, I always like to mention this. Brian put this in his slides, but this comes from our co-founder Martin. And I always like to say this to all of our clients. As you're thinking about all of this, always remember, think big, start small, scale fast. You don't have to boil the ocean at once. We can work on this with you together. So I always just like to reference that. It was so cool to see Brian show this. So this idea is what we really want to take you through today, is how you can look at structuring these journeys in a new way and start to roll up your journeys based on some of the updates that we've made. So I'm going to hop out of this presentation mode and let me
Before you
move.
do that, can I
Yeah,
ask you two things on this, because this is
absolutely.
also what I'm hearing all the time. Like,
Mhm.
this is a framework, right? This is a framework,
Yep.
a basic idea, just like a fireside chat or a
Mhm. Yep.
campfire is a very basic idea, but there can happen so many things in the fireside chat, just as in a framework. So level 0, 1, 2, 3, um, I've also seen 5 level frameworks, 6 level frameworks,
Mhm.
very sophisticated, um, put together frameworks. This is the basic version of
Yeah.
understanding what levels you might have. And then
Mhm.
also like macro and micro. These
Yeah.
are terms that are common, but not like the only terms out there. Can you speak a bit of what you have seen as well, just to also help this group and people listening in? Is like,
Sure.
we need to change terminology. I don't think that is the point. It's more like the level
No,
of granularity and fidelity that we're talking about here, really. Like, what have you seen?
exactly. Yeah, no, it's a great point, and not every organization does it the same way, and that's okay, right? I think the big thing, and I mentioned that with the think big, start small, scale fast idea, is that as you're thinking about structuring your journeys, or as you're thinking about how you might want to use journeys and look at how it can impact your business metrics, the idea is to find a way that it works with your organization. In this case, we find that this is a nice framework to showcase different levels of Zoom that we've seen be effective. But to your point, Joachim, some customers go super deep and granular, and they go even further down than this. Others look at 1 to 2 levels of journeys, usually 2 to 3 actually, in terms of how they're structuring it, and that's okay in terms of driving towards success. So it doesn't have to be that you have to go to an L3. If you have L5, that's fine. If you're not quite sure what L you want to go to, that's all right as well. We're happy to help work with you and make it make sense within the context of your business. But the idea here, the broader concept is, how can you think about using journeys in a way that as you get deeper and as you get more engaged based on the steps your end users are taking, be that an employee or that be that a customer, that you can actually do so in such a way that you can have plenty of room to get enough depth of your research and then tie that back to the story and the impact that you're actually having. And so I think that's a really key here, is that, to your point, yes, you don't have to just use this terminology. We can adjust it or we can help you work through it. But it's more important you just think about the structure of how you can get deeper and deeper as it is that you're looking to perform research and work with your customers.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
clarifying that. And I think the other concept, but I'm sure you're gonna dig into that with us, is that
Mhm.
some of the teams that we had the pleasure working with had something like this in place. But what
Yeah.
was in place was the idea of like, hey, we're talking about customer lifecycle, where there's a few
Mhm.
metrics around cross-sell, churn, upsell.
Yeah.
That is like happening at the lifecycle stage. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a journey, but it's more like a PowerPoint presentation. And there was
Yeah.
like a very granular journey on specifically buying a mobile phone online, but it was like all over the place. Nothing was
Mhm.
connected. And I think the key word here would be roll up, because that is kind of like how we're seeing the world.
Yeah.
If something happens in that buying a phone online journey that links to the purchase experience as part of your customer lifecycle, that is important enough to be bubbled up, that is actually the connection that you want to establish. So even
Yeah.
though the levels are different to different people, it's about creating a single framework where all
Mhm.
of this ties together. And I think that is the thing where I saw a lot of excitement around when we started to introduce this. So, but I'm sure you're gonna dig into that. But I just want to clarify, like that roll up
Yeah.
idea is something to hone in on. So I'm curious what you have for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the roll up, I want to actually go through a very basic example of kind of an end-to-end journey just to give you a high level of how this roll up can work. And then what we're going to do is flip over and go through a version of our management dashboard that shows you kind of actually how we're working through TheyDo. Now, caveat, the metrics have been changed so that they're not real. So no panic from any TheyDoers that are on here in Yoakum. Don't worry, we don't have to have a review on this, I hope. But what I want to showcase here is exactly to your point, how it is that we can kind of roll up and nest these journeys in a way that you can really think about zooming, getting deeper and deeper as you want to get more and more granular. So if we want to take this concept just to bring it home, and then I'll get into the real journey. is if we start at an L0 journey level. So if we're thinking about the customer lifecycle from an end-to-end experience, most of us are familiar with this, where we're going from the phases of awareness, consideration, purchase, retention, and loyalty. Pretty common in terms of phases of what we see for a lot of customer lifecycle from an end-to-end perspective. So this is the 50,000 foot view. Now, there's a lot more you can do in these journeys, but I just want to showcase how this works. But the concept is you start at this L0 level. As you think about nesting and drilling down into your sub journeys, you can get more and more specific. So I just clicked from the L0 level, which is the highest level, down into L1. And so you can see now that my phases are changing, related more towards as I'm getting more and more granular. So the idea is I'm not just thinking about that whole life cycle. I'm really focused on the purchase experience. So we're just narrowing down into that specific area. And so with this, the idea is you can build out journeys that are much more robust. And again, we'll show through real examples in just a moment, but I just want to highlight this. And as you're going deeper and deeper, the idea is each step that you're going, you can get more and more granular. And so if I jump into L2, this is now going into the idea of buying a mobile phone online. So it's more of the task journey. So again, this is an example of what we're building towards. And then this last piece is the key that I wanted to highlight here in this example, which is a source journey. And this is where a lot of the impact can come when it comes to rolling up. So the idea being we're not just looking at the overall end-to-end life cycle, but we're really drilling down into what specifically an end user is doing. And so in this source journey example, what we're seeing here is actual feedback from our customers where we can get super granular. And again, each level you can do this, but just to highlight this point, the idea is you can gather your insights from your end customer. So this is a journey that we built using our AI functionality so that as you're actually clicking on different insights, these are things that are being actually populated by our AI. Let me move your face, Yoakum, just so we're not blocking the preview screen. And so what we can see here is these details and these key areas of feedback that we're getting from our customers. So we used our AI functionality to actually generate this journey. So we took transcripts or sample transcripts from customer calls. And by uploading these into the journey, what you can actually see is specifically the feedback and the origin that you're getting as you're generating this journey. And the idea here is that you can take these source journeys, the concept that I'm looking at, this one small snippet of what a end customer is experiencing. And I can take all the feedback I'm gathering and use this source journey to really blow it out. What are all the sub steps that customer's taking? What's their experience? Let's really drill down and get as much information as we can into this source journey. And then the beauty is we can actually roll it up. So I'm going to move your face again. And so the idea is I'm in this L3 journey, but as I hop up in the chain, so I'm going to L2, my insights, my opportunities, those elements that were built at that source journey level are coming with me. So I can see all of these insights, the feedback that we got from our customers, and I can see what source journey they're coming from. So it's all the way back at L3. And if I follow this same pattern, I can go all the way back up to the L0 journey, that first 50,000 foot view journey. And what I can pull in now is all my insights, all my opportunities from any different journey that I want to look through. And the idea is this can help me as I'm looking to tell a story so that as you're going higher and higher up to the L0 level, you can just highlight what matters most. So here's the insights that we see are having the biggest impact. What are the biggest pains that you want to articulate? What are the biggest opportunities to make an impact? And you can actually structure your journeys in such a way that you can help tell a very nice contextual story. And then layer on top of this the real metrics that are having an impact. I want to pause there before I jump into one of our journeys. Anything you want to call out, Yoakum, or you think would be important to highlight?
Yeah, I'll take some questions from the
Yeah.
audience. So, and I want you to answer them so I can be sitting back and relax. Um, Adam Miller asked, I like the idea of revealing different layers of a map almost one at a time to make them more consumable rather than showing the entire map at once, which can feel overwhelming. Do you have something built into your software to present it that way, or any best practices for presenting them in this way? And I think this question came in before you went through this, but anything that about revealing that you want to highlight here, what you actually have done?
Sure. I mean, I think in terms of from a revealing perspective, there's a couple different things. So as you're thinking about how you want to structure, I think how your journeys tell a story, and we'll show this when we jump into the TheyDo example of kind of how we're building out our journey structure and how we're nesting everything, and it speaks to how other customers are using this. What I would really recommend is each level of Zoom that you're going higher. So if you're kind of backing out as you're getting in, think about showcasing those key points as it relates to the level that you are. Meaning, if you're starting at the very, very deep level and you want to gather all of your research and all of your feedback and all of your information, you're looking at just putting everything in there. If you go a level higher, what can actually showcase and have an impact? And so being selective about those points that can drive the biggest impact. And these are things that there's multiple ways that you can approach this. So we have things like opportunity scoring that we can talk through a little bit later of how you can use that to help you identify which opportunities or which solutions may drive the biggest impact for your business. We even have the concept of opportunity reveal, which we've recently updated, which is with our AI, we can actually suggest opportunities based on the insights that are living within a given journey. So there's a couple different ways that you can look at approaching this. But as you're thinking about telling the story, I think it's really, really important to make sure that as you're building your journey, what are the key points in that specific step or phase that you're looking at that highlight like what is the main thing you want your end user to consume, and building it that way is what I would suggest. And I can hop into an example here, but any other points you want to mention too, Joachim, there?
Yeah, I like this because what we had Joanna from Forrester a few or in one of the last webinars we did, where she talked about the idea of a journey atlas, right? Where all these journeys
Mm-hmm.
together
Yeah,
also build up
yeah,
like your entire framework.
yeah,
And then she said, look, not all of these journeys have to be built out at the beginning, right? Just as you
yeah,
have shown, like the level zero customer lifecycle. This is like no one would appreciate looking at this, right? This is just an example. But the L1 purchase experience is then broken down and all the way to the bottom where you're collecting that feedback live. That starts to become something relevant, right? So
yeah,
building this out over time is what I really like about what you
yeah,
just said is like start or think big, start small and then scale. And that is
yeah.
actually what helps as well. I hope, Adam, this was an answer to your question. If not, please elaborate more. So let's see.
And Joachim,
Related.
really quickly, oh, sorry. One thing I just want to mention there is also like that same concept as you're building out your journeys doesn't have to just relate to journeys that you're nesting. That can also be for things like metrics or areas where you might want to perform additional research or look to validate specific insights. And that's where your taxonomy can have a huge, huge impact of adding things like, hey, this is an assumption. If you're thinking about an insight that you've kind of gathered anecdotally, or if you're thinking about how you might want to address it. So I just want to reference that too, is that doesn't just relate to journeys. Get
Yeah,
started, but part of the power of a map is you can lay out what you know and what you don't know, and then be able to kind of segment in that right way.
cool.
Yeah.
I have one more related to this one specifically, and I know Mary also has questions adjacent to this. I'm going to go back to your
Mm-hmm.
questions, Mary, but I'm going to take the one from Tom. I've presented a very similar, almost identical framework to my art. Kudos, Tom. However, I found that folks had trouble determining what is L1, what is L2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
Are there more detailed definitions of each level? And have you leveraged to ensure consistency, or is there any other solution I should be considering in such a problem? You want to speak to that, Dan?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think um, some customers that we've worked with, part of what they're focusing on a lot is defining kind of what is their playbook or what is their glossary, so to speak, in terms of how it is that they're structuring what each level might mean or how they're using particular terms within the concept of journey management. And I think that's something that can be very, very beneficial. But another thing I would actually suggest here, and we spoke about this at the beginning, is a glossary can help. Adding definition around how it is that you're structuring all of your journeys can absolutely help, and we definitely recommend it. But I would also take a step back and think about, what is the impact that you're trying to drive? What are you trying to showcase with your journeys, and what are you learning that you want to deliver? And if that naming convention is so confusing to such that it doesn't work, you can try and think about something else that might be able to help make it more effective. You could also use like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Like there's different ways that you could kind of structure this from a naming perspective that it could make sense. And we'll jump into this when we show the TheyDo journey too. But I think one thing that's really helpful is as you're thinking about the structure of this, images can go a long way. And so within TheyDo, what you can also add at a journey level is you can actually showcase different images, from a storyboarding perspective at the top of your journey that can also help when it comes to consuming and understanding what it is that I'm looking at. We found that that's really, really, really helpful with a lot of customers we work with is if you're adding some images, you can even use AI to generate like a consistent image theme if you want it. But those images can also help as it relates to people kind of understanding and contextualizing where it is that they stand as you're thinking about those.
Maybe we should switch gears and show it in practice.
Let's
Start
do it.
digging in, and then we'll take some more questions as we go. Yes, nice. That would be
Ta-da.
helpful.
All right. So here is the probably overhyped journey that I've been mentioning. So this is an actual version of our management journey that we use at TheyDo. So the metrics are fake. I've reshifted around some of these nested journeys that we've added to make it more streamlined and so that I'm not accidentally sharing sensitive information. So these numbers aren't real. Like we're looking at this as an example, but I think going back to the last point, as you're thinking about telling a story, how you're structuring your journeys can have a really, really big impact of what that story can deliver. And so it may be helpful for us to talk through how we've built this journey and why. In some ways that can help that I've seen working with other customers that can really help people understand what they're reviewing. So this is our L0 TheyDo journey framework. And so these actual phases and steps are real in terms of how we meet every week to review our journeys. So we have a leadership team, and what we do every single week is we have key basically group within TheyDo is responsible for updating. So we have certain opportunities that we've identified. We have certain metrics that we're updating. Some of these are getting updated automatically. Some of these are getting updated manually, which we'll speak to. But the idea is every week when we're meeting as a leadership team, and then once a month and once a quarter, we have deeper level deep dives. We're looking at the end user journey as the core of how it is that we're making decisions and how we're looking to drive impact for our business. And so this is something that's been really, really effective for us. And so as we've structured this journey, the idea is we're relating these different phases to different departments within our organizations. And so, as we're thinking about, the consideration and problem aware stage, this is really, really important for like the marketing team as it is that they're looking to get going. And so a lot of our metrics, and again, these are fake, these aren't our real metrics. Some of these are kind of how they've set up, but most of these are just dummy metrics that we're showcasing. We're looking at these key KPIs across these different areas within the journey. And this is where we're having conversations where we're articulating. The visuals I think are really important in terms of telling the story, but also these metrics. What I was trying to highlight here is that as you're thinking about like what's important depending on the level of Zoom that you are, adding in these key metrics that matter for your business are really important depending on the level of Zoom that you are. So like right now when we're thinking about our framework journey, our L0 journey at TheyDo, we have revenue targets that we're looking for. So it's about, net new revenue and actual revenue retention. But then we're also looking at these key metrics that are making an impact per step. So we're looking at these different metrics that are kind of breaking out on each step so that we can actually really contextualize and dig in if we need to dive deeper. And so the idea is we have kind of a high level leaderboard of how we're doing as a company. And then across each of these segments within the organization, we can see what matters at each step to make sure that we're really aligning around what's most important for us as a business and across the different departments as they're working together.
So how about because maybe we should bring it home by saying like, okay, this is the L0 journey, which is super
Yeah,
useful, especially if you're
yeah,
the CEO and need a pulse check of like how we're doing. But
yeah,
I think what we also did is like think through like the levels of
yeah.
journeys, because this is a framework, right? And typically what we're seeing, like the customer lifecycle is more like a business framework, right? We're thinking through
Yeah.
like what business does the customer have with us? We'll have them they with us in case of like how do they become aware of
Mm,
their problems that we are aiming to solve. But ultimately it's not about what we think they do, it's about what they do,
yeah.
right? So we're thinking through that as well. So maybe we should start with the journeys and
Yeah.
then bring it up again, because I think that is
Sure.
fantastic that to show
Yep.
as
Yep. You got
examples.
it. So scrolling down a little bit, and sorry about the internet issue, but how we've structured this within our own journeys is thinking about what they do, meaning what our customers are doing, and then what are we doing about this. And so in our actual journey, we have far, far more nested journeys underneath these. They have too many metrics that I couldn't actually get away with showing. So I've copied a few of these just to give this as an example. But to bring home the point we brought at the beginning, we have our L0 journey, which is the framework level, and we can drill down into this L1. And so I have a demo version that I just want to take you through, which is now we're getting a layer deeper. And so it's all about the idea of like, how is it do I want to map a journey in TheyDo? I'm just getting started in TheyDo. And so the idea is going one level deeper. Again, we're using kind of the visuals to showcase what's the customer experience. Again, we're showcasing, and these are fake, metrics that we're actually seeing across a step-by-step basis. How is it that they're actually responding? How is it that our customers are going through the overall journey of mapping a journey in TheyDo? And then how can we start to make those decisions? And so, like I mentioned at the outset, this is where you can start to then utilize your key insights of like, hey, what are the biggest pains that we're seeing? And how are we looking to address these? And these pains are coming from actual customer research. You can see that there's highlights here, like I mentioned before, where if we click in, we'll be able to see the source information. We'll be able to see any related insights of where these are coming from. So this came from an actual interview in February. And all of this is even being built by deeper level journeys. And so this is where nesting can be really important, where we then have those micro journeys, those L3 level journeys that get even more specific. And so as we've actually built these journeys, and again, I've pulled out some of our nested journeys, the concept is we can then ladder all this up to make sure that all the metrics we're looking at a business level are coming and deriving from like what's actually occurring within the end customer's experience.
Yeah, I love that. And these are research based, these are transcript
Mm-hmm.
based, these are
Yep.
coming from our surveys. So there's many different sources coming together here.
Yep.
What is also good to know is like who runs with these journeys, right? It's not
Yep.
all like cross-functional teams, right? Some have
Yep.
specific owners who are responsible for that. Like this is also a topic that comes up a lot.
Yep.
Can you speak to how we're doing that? And for instance, like this L0 journey,
Yep.
who runs with this and how do we think
Yep.
about it?
Yep, absolutely. So the L0 journey that I showed before is really being managed. I think technically you're the owner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
But then each of the individual leads within the areas are responsible for updating certain metrics or keeping their nested source journeys up to date. So, for example, thinking about like mapping a journey, and TheyDo, we have the product team who's actually overseeing refining this. Eustace is doing a great job keeping this specific journey up to date and using all the latest and greatest features. And so the idea is
Justos is
within
a product manager, by the way, just
yes,
to
yes.
clarify that.
Thank you very much. I realize not everyone knows him as well. Great person, by the way. Good movie taste. So Eustace is and his team are working on this to keep as they're having interviews with customers. They basically have deeper and deeper levels of nested journeys. And so as they're getting actual interviews with customers, as they're getting feedback across support tickets, like if you really dig into the granular aspects of this journey, they're using those to refresh their basically source journeys and then laddering that all the way up to the top so that when we're coming to these leadership meetings, we know that we have validated research that is coming and is coming in real time from our customers. And we can tie back our decisions all the way back to that validated research. And going to one point that I just want to mention here that I think is really important is when we're thinking about like, hey, are these actually validated insights? So in some instances, we'll have, really research-based validated insight. You can see this has been validated. It has a status in that way. But sometimes we don't always have that, validated research. Sometimes we might have assumptions that we're working through. And so it's also really important to some of the questions that came up before is as you're thinking about your types, as you're thinking about your taxonomy, you can also utilize things like, hey, this is an assumption, or this is something that we think is occurring, but we still need to test it. And that's where a lot of your taxonomy can have a big impact because then as you're thinking about your biggest pains or your insights, you can search by those that are validated or those that are assumptions, and it can help you to make a better decision. And in this case, these are our biggest pains, so we know these are ones that have been validated. But this is where you can really kind of build this up. And one thing I didn't mention on the previous journey, but I think is important to think about as we're thinking through how we can roll up information is that one of our newer releases is I guess it's been a few months now, but we allow you to now add these summary lanes where you can choose your data points that you want to highlight. So you can actually choose, do you want to have roll-ups of your insights or your opportunities or solutions? And you can toggle these on and off. You can change the status by type. How it is that you want to break this out. This really, really helps from a storytelling perspective as you're thinking about, hey, how are we thinking about how all these journeys relate to one another? This can really help give you an actionable dashboard to get a sense of like, how many solutions are we looking at by this particular status, or how many insights are we seeing by type? This can be really, really impactful to think about your journeys going from, like I mentioned before, a static artifact into something that is really, really driving to value for your business.
Nice. So let's double
Mm-hmm.
click on that because I think that is
Yep.
also what we promise people. They're like, okay, cool. We're going to structure it. We're going to talk about rolling up these journeys. And
Yep.
now we've, I think, got a good understanding of like how to do this level 0,
Yep.
1, 2, 3, and how things roll up. Um, shall we talk about how to track this back actually to drive business value? And you can
Yeah.
use this L0 in TheyDo or
Yep.
the one that you had to
Yeah.
like,
I'll leave this
how
one.
are we actually bringing this back to life? And why does it matter? I mean, again, system of record is
Yep.
all good. And then what?
Yep. And these are some of the updates that I'm honestly most excited about, and that you asked for kind of anecdotal feedback from customers. This is something that we are getting a lot of excitement about from our customers, which is improvements to how it is that we're utilizing metric cards within TheyDo. So if you haven't used metric cards, I highly recommend you look into this. But as we're mentioning, we're looking at building out what are the key metrics that matter on a per step basis, and how we can build these out now is this is a great example right here. And let me move my little preview screen. So we have this metric, for example, journeys per enterprise customer. And so this information right here is showcasing how we're performing against this metric over time. This is being pulled directly from BigQuery, which is a one of our first integrations that we've released in terms of being able to connect directly with data sources like data warehouses, and we're improving this. But the idea is this is a metric that is now kept up to date automatically. You can do it manually as well. But what we can actually highlight here is solutions that have been released and showcasing how they're actually having an impact on your metrics. So the idea is as you're building out your metric cards, as you're refining these and defining who the owner is, in this case, it's you, Yoakum, we can actually tie back any released solutions and showcase the impact that they're having on your metrics. So this is just an example of kind of the opportunity reveal, which I mentioned before, which is a big update that we released earlier this year of the ability that you can use our AI functionality to suggest opportunities for you. But what you're seeing here is looking at this metric and looking at these metrics that matter to us and getting an understanding for how solutions that we've actually released as a team are impacting these core metrics. And so if you structure your journey correctly, what you can really start to do is show that like how you're going all the way from insight through to solution and then the driving it back to the key metrics that matter. And so this is super important. And you'll see and hear more from us coming up about like how we're looking to improve the metric cards. But this is absolutely vital in terms of the success that we're seeing. And a lot of our customers are getting really, really excited about this because this can help go from like, hey, we're just thinking about some CX metrics and we're having some impact, but we're not quite sure what we're doing. But this is where we can start to tie and showcase like, no, these are the metrics that we have identified that will actually make an impact on us. And what are we doing about it? Well, actually, here's what we've released and here's when. And you can actually click through to see this card. You can see the journeys it's related to. You can see the opportunities that are tied to this so that you can actually understand holistically how you've come about this decision-making process. And this is absolutely revolutionary in terms of what we're seeing of how customers are starting to use this. And so really, really want to highlight that because this helps in terms of showcasing, hey, what are we doing about this? How are we making an impact on the business beyond just providing journey maps? Really what we can show here is that no, more than just a static journey map, what we're doing is we're building a contextual dashboard or contextual decision-making engine where we're tracking your key metrics, but we're doing it through the lens of understanding what's actually occurring by your end customers, by your employees, and really tying that all together into a nice bow, which is really, really, really important and we think can drive major impact on businesses.
So how do we know then which solutions are relevant to this part? Because journeys per enterprise customer in this case sits at the
Mm-hmm.
far end of the life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I assume not all solutions we're shipping are directly impacting that. So how are we mapping that particular part? Because I think that is the crux of it all. It's not like
Yep.
all journeys together because they're rolled up
Yeah.
tell that same story, right? It's also about
Yep.
like understanding what maps onto that.
Yep. And in this case, this has to do with contextualization. So, like I mentioned before, the solutions that are actually going to appear and be available to be mapped against your metrics relates to where these solutions actually live within your journeys or your nested journeys. So, in this case, opportunity reveal, just for example, had under expanding. And so, because it's under this exact area within the journey, we're then able to tie it back to the metric card as well. So that the same concept applies of this is about contextualized decision making and helping you to really contextualize what is it your end user, be that employee, customer, is actually experiencing, and then how are you delivering value against that?
Right. So what you're saying
Yeah.
is your lifecycle framework
Mm-hmm.
defined by these 8 KPIs or 9 KPIs
Mm-hmm.
is on the top, but how you
Yep.
map your journeys against them will
Yep.
determine what is happening in them, what are you experiencing
Yep.
there, what are you capturing there.
Yep.
That is actually how we're bringing it back to life. And the cool
Yep.
thing, what I also enjoy seeing is that this works with historical data as well, right? If you just pull in from the last year of data
Mm-hmm.
and you're bringing your epics that you have been shipping, and even if you
Yep.
connect Jira or DevOps, whatever you use for your product management, you will be able to bring those two together in the context of your journeys.
Yep.
So I want to switch gears a bit to questions because we have few. Sander van Duren says nested journeys in the what they do lane makes sense to me. But what does a nested journey in the what we do lane look like and how does it help? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of like what we do, so this is just a sample that I put together for this of like thinking about um, the customer's like first journey. So like year one. So this is a little demo I put together of this year one journey of like thinking about how we're onboarding a customer and how we're looking to build that experience. So again, forgive my AI mocks that I put together. But the idea is, hey, we've got a new customer joining TheyDo. How is it that we're going to work with them? So a few things that we're looking at is let's assume that we're still in this like just getting to know the customer phase. What we're using here is you can use some of our text lanes to actually like drive and identify, hey, what is it that we want to accomplish at each step? This is something that's really important. And I meant to call it earlier is something that some of our customers actually really, really enjoy seeing and don't always think about when they're building journeys is that you have these really flexible text lanes that can allow you to say, here's steps that we want to take or things that we want to make sure that we're accomplishing as you're looking to build journeys. But within this, what you can start to structure is like, all right, I'm onboarding a new customer. What metrics matter to us? Okay, as I'm starting to work with a customer, what metrics matter to them? And how can we help them start to track and build out their journeys? And so the idea is as I'm going through the phase of, because I am on the customer success team, my job comes in after the sale, like the original sale comes in, we're really responsible with our enablement partners to kind of bring these customers along. And so for us, it's like, are we making sure they're getting through the completion percentage? How is it that we're looking to see their usage? And then what you can do here is actually nest journeys about, okay, let's look at the onboarding process, for example. So like if we just want to go through the onboarding journey, and again, we use some samples with AI, we can actually take this as our source journeys and like actually refresh this with information that we're gathering from calls. So like recording calls with our customers, taking those transcripts, using our journey AI functionality to refresh our journeys to keep them up to date. And then the idea is as we're going levels higher and thinking about managing our individual customers, we can keep track of those within a journey. And so that's just a customer success example. We have more. So we have journeys when we're actually looking at our real live dashboard. We have the full, what's the marketing team working on? What's the entire go-to-market journey from marketing to sales to success and enablement? How are we looking at support? How are our teams actually working together to kind of build out the experience for our customers and where's their overlap? What's the handoff look like between sales and customer success and how do we improve that? So those are the types of things when you're thinking about what do we do that can help us make sure that we're hitting those gaps and make sure that like we're managing the teams appropriately to give ideally great experiences to all of you.
Nice. Let's bring it back to the level 0. And then
Yep.
while you do that, another thing that I've also seen a
Mm-hmm.
lot of teams do is we have process maps, right? We have
Yep.
processes in place. Sometimes that's a good starting point. You take your process and then think like, oh, but this is actually how we do things. What is the customer experience like between those steps? So you can also build it up from
Yep.
there using the
Yep.
same lens. This is just a
Yep.
tiny detail because our name is TheyDo. It's obviously a funny way to explain that, but it's literally about they are trying to
Yep.
map a journey on
Yep.
TheyDo. So taking their perspective,
Yep.
like what do they struggle with? What do they experience? Where is the data coming from? How do
Mm-hmm.
they build that first journey? Like it's all about them. It's not so much about we believe you should click on this button. We believe you should do
Yep.
that. It's really
Yep.
like what are they doing? By the way, it's red because we focus on the pain points right now. It's also great to see what goes well, and I mean that's why we're still in business. But the
Yep.
red indicates like all the pain points associated with it.
Yep.
So our teams are also surfacing these opportunities from it.
Yep.
But what it does for me, to give an example, is if I know my KPIs are going down, I don't need to go and manically search for what is going on, talk to all my
Yep.
teams, talk to Dan, talk to everyone else. I can actually look at this, and if it's done correctly, which many of our teams are doing, I can see what are the new pains that we've
Mm-hmm.
explored over the last 30 days. And I can understand here's new pain points coming in. That might
Mm-hmm.
explain why, my metric is down, for
Yep.
instance. And
Yep.
then, of course, I want to assess, are we doing something about it, which is the
Sure.
the next stage.
Yep. And to your point, what are the key initiatives for the quarter? What are we building? Like, there's some examples I left in here in terms of like what are some opportunities we have product wise to grow. And as we're building these out, you can nest your solutions so you can really see the progress, which is really all about bringing this to life so that this is not just a dashboard of information, but you can actually see what's going on in the work that's actually in progress. That as teams are closing out solutions that are going towards an opportunity of how might we improve something within the end customer experience, we can also see that in real time. So other members of the leadership team are also aware. We can track this and be able to drill down and see how we're progressing. Hey, what might be a choke point as well, and be able to work together there.
Cool. I'm gonna
Yeah.
take a question from Mary van Duivenbode. It's about AI, and I think about the use of AI to handle thousands of inputs from different
Mm.
customer feedback sources like interviews and surveys. And
Yeah.
she asked, like, how do big corporates tackle
Mm.
uploading transcripts to AI with the privacy aspect? Um, I'm sure you have a few stories and examples on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so, um, in general, you know, with a lot of the big corporations that we've been working with, we make sure that we go through and that we're very transparent about how we're building our AI. We have documentation we can share. We go through that. That's not the, I know, the most exciting answer, but we do work with you on that. And that's something that we can help make sure that we pass. And the AI can be enabled or disabled by your admins, just so you know. So that's not something that has to be opted into. So some corporates have rules around AI that we're in the process of getting approval for. And so that's just a little caveat there. But once we pass those hurdles, you know, how it is that we're working with the customers is really focusing on using transcripts as a way to kind of refresh a journey, as an example. So taking a transcript from a customer call and adding that to the journey as a way that we can help them really keep the journey up to date. And so this is something that I can show you in just a moment too of how it works. But with the big corporations that we're working with, you know, really how they're getting value right now is kind of going piece by piece or working at adding like a specific transcript or some insights that they want to be able to add or copy and paste over from like Miro and Figma, kind of on a one by one basis. But that's really where our company is focusing quite a bit on and looking at building out ways that you can kind of pull in information from tons of unstructured data sources and really bring those to life within TheyDo is one of our core tenants and one of the core things that we're building towards in the back half of this year. But like when it comes to those big corporations, once we're getting past that initial hurdle from an AI perspective, I'm actually finding that they're adopting pretty well and seeing a lot of success with it because I think it's becoming more and more ubiquitous. I hear from a lot more corporations that when we're starting to talk with them that like they're used to using maybe ChatGPT or they have certain ways that they're using AI internally. And once we're kind of clearing that initial hurdle, honestly, the feedback's been pretty solid in terms of being able to use those transcript capabilities to keep the journeys refreshed. We've had a few companies mentioned like saving anywhere from a third to taking a third of the time to kind of keep their journeys up to date using AI to some saying a quarter of the time, 20% of the time. So it's pretty significant in terms of the updates that we're hearing kind of anecdotally from our customers.
One of the things we might want to dig into in the last few minutes, Dan, I don't know if
Yeah,
you're up for test driving some of the new filter capabilities, because
sure.
Jenny Tsai, I hope I say that right. Great stuff. She says, we'll be interested to understand the team that is involved from a company to input, manage all these layers of journeys.
Yeah.
From your experience, from whom from an organization is typically the owner, facilitator
Mhm.
in the process. And while you think through like how we can exemplify that a little bit, I'll speak from
Yeah.
my experience because when we started this company, what we saw was that this is like the hardest thing to do if you're not a CX or a service designer or UX professional or skilled in design thinking or a professional researcher. It's hard. You need to know like how journeys are structured and how to bring the data together, what a pain point is, how to do affinity mapping, all these kind of like little things which are actually big when you think about them.
Mhm.
You need to know them. But really what is happening now is that once companies are setting their basic structure around like, okay, how do we look at the whole world of the customer experience, like this level 0, 1, and then L1 macro journeys, and then bring them down to task journeys. The task journeys become less relevant to be very
Mhm.
deterministic about what they need to be. It's all about where do they sit in the bigger experience. To give another example, and then Dan, I'll let you riff on it a little bit. For banks, the signing up or the KYC journey, knowing your customer journey happens across all these different products. It's just one journey, one team responsible for delivering that, but it impacts the experience in many different places. So putting it in the right context is more important than defining where does the journey begin and where does it end. But what it does for me right now to bring it back up to how this came to be, I don't need to sit with all the teams and understand like, okay, you can do this journey and this is how I want you to work on that journey. And here your journey ends and there just this journey starts. It's about building a shared understanding so that I can go here and say, what are the new pain points we identified the last quarter? And I don't want to go and talk to everyone, but I have all that data in one place. And I think that is what we are now seeing in the right places, in the right context. That
Yeah.
is what matters at the different levels of the organization. I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers your question specifically, Jenny, but I'll let Dan take another step at that.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you, Jochen. But I think also, Jenny, just to as you're thinking about how to build this out, one of the nice things about TheyDo is you can assign different owners to all the different building blocks. So not just at a journey level, but at an insight level, like you're looking at opportunities, solutions, kind of who's responsible for the opportunities and solutions that you're bringing to market, for example. And so with a lot of companies that we're working with, usually what's happening is we're starting with the core team. So we're helping getting them onboarded, helping them figure out kind of what's the base level taxonomy, what's our base level playbook of how we're going to bring this to life, and then we start to kind of bring in other team members and help them as they're working. And as we're improving our product and making it easier to understand contextually and tell stories, the barrier to entry that kind of Joachim was speaking to is lowering in terms of what I'm seeing. And so this is where there can be a lot of really great collaboration of finding like a delivery team, for example. So with a lot of customers that I work with, it might be a matter of like, hey, we're performing our research, but we're running into a wall a little bit when it comes to delivery. And so what we often recommend is like, finding a VP of product or product manager that you're friendly with, or that you have a project that you're working towards, and kind of bringing them into the fold of what you're building. And that can build a lot of trust. You can get a lot of excitement within those delivery teams as they start to understand the ability of kind of contextualizing the end-to-end flow. Oh, that helps. That helps actually my product owners think about how I might want to make decisions. So if this could actually be beneficial to us as we're looking at delivering different solutions. And so really thinking about like, who are those next level of people that you could work with within an organization, or who are folks where you might have a joint project that you could work on this with is an effective strategy that we use sometimes in terms of getting buy-in from teams that maybe are unsure or not as used to this from a flow perspective. But then it's a matter of really assigning them one specific area of like a solution, for example. So in the product example I was just mentioning, we can integrate with Jira Cloud, for example, and we can make sure that there's a bidirectional sync so that the product teams don't even have to touch anything necessarily, depending on how you structure this, where they can close everything in Jira if that's what they're using to manage their tickets, and it will push back into TheyDo. So then really what's happening is you're just using this as a kind of when you're working with those delivery teams, you're using these journeys to tell the contextual story, but they're not even having to do anything in some instances where they can still get the benefits of this. They can still review the journey, but they can use their standard way of working, and it can still have an impact on the business. So there's multiple ways that we can look at approaching that. But I think it's really important, just like we said at the beginning, is think about where you want to go and then starting small and scaling from there. So the idea of who are some friendlies, who are some folks that are nearby your organization that you might be working with, you can then bring along and look to build that together. And we're of course happy to help provide additional suggestions or guidance as needed.
So Dan, this was phenomenal. We talked about how to master
Mm-hmm.
nested journeys and why not just defining your L0 all the way down to what levels you have, but also how to connect them, rolling up your data. And we're just scratching the surface, it seems. But what you've shown is how to actually track back
Yeah.
impact on what you're building back to those business metrics that sit on the higher levels, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate the real world examples of CGH, and also showing a little bit how you're actually seeing that into our customers. So before we leave today, is there anything that you can share with the audience today where you think like this is the most surprising thing I learned over the last, I don't know, few months that I really want people to take home? And I'm sure like they know you, they can reach out to you with any questions, but like what will be the last thing you want to bring with us today before we go? Any insight, anything that surprised you most you want to share on building a journey management dashboard?
In terms of things that surprised me most, um, honestly, this isn't a surprise, but the thing that resonates with me, and the reason I mentioned Brian's story from CHG at the beginning, is how much when we're coming to customers with this idea of nesting your journeys and using your journeys as a dashboard, it feels almost like a yes, like that level of like, oh, this is great. This is what we need to go from thinking about journeys as, like I said, a static artifact into something that you can actually use and manage. And that level of like excitement towards what we're building has been, I don't know if it's a surprise, but it's been absolutely fantastic for me to see, and for my team to see, as it is that we're kind of engaging with other teams and with other individuals. So like for me, that's been the most exciting thing. I don't know that it's a surprise necessarily, but I think seeing the fervor and excitement for it has been even more than I anticipated in the best way possible, to be honest. Yeah.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
feels like we're just getting started. Executive summaries, getting your insights presented to you, being able to talk with your journeys, all of that is coming, bringing it all together.
Filters.
Yeah,
Yes.
filters, talking about
Yeah.
what I just shared, right? Seeing all my
Yeah.
insights, what
Yeah.
happened last month, and not like any insight, and then also looking at what is validated so I can actually
Yeah.
rest assured that we're on top of things.
Mhm.
These are all things that we're working on. Thank you, Dan, for being with me. Next week, for everyone who is going to be joining us, then we'll have Todd Unger joining me. He is the author of 10-second journey, and we're going to talk about linking CX to business growth. So it's an adjacent topic to where we were today. If you want to check that out, check out our channels. You can find the link, and we'll post it also in the show notes. But for today, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. I
Thank
know
you.
we said like we're going to geek out on product, and I think we definitely delivered on that, which is something I love a lot. And thank you also for bringing up the cloaks off idea of just showing what we do at TheyDo and how we're thinking about the structures and how we're doing this. This was fun. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining me.
Thank thank you for having us, and thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. And sorry that a monsoon caused my internet to pause for a moment there. I appreciate you bearing with me. So thank you. Yeah.
We'll cut it out in the recording for everyone. So
That
don't
sounds
worry
good.
about it. Have a lovely day, evening,
Thank
wherever
you.
in the world you are. And see you next week or the next time. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.